meeting already? Executive session.
Oh, yeah. Retirement community, and he was starting to get a little antsy. Yeah.
Hey, look at the old.
Turn your speaker off.
Oh.
Or, oh, you got one on too.
Mark, is the Bear Lake gonna flood, or Bear River gonna flood this year?
We think so, but you know, the flows they haven't started coming up yet.
I know, that's
Okay.
the,
Below Alexander, yesterday at 149 feet. And.
Well, you can't shut the door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like 347.
shut the doors here.
Now, down in Cache Valley, it's picking up, you know, below Cutler. But, we got a lot of stones gotta go somewhere.
So the bear can flood even if the lake's not full. Because
Yeah,
there's so much
because
below
it's
it.
down in 17.
Yeah.
The flood literally was this time of year.
Yeah.
And we were running.
And that's the area where we're trying to buy.
Right, but it's gonna flood,
Floods anyway.
it's gonna flood, on snow and ice events.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's good.
The
for
longer it
that.
stays cold, the more it compresses this deal. That means.
Okay.
Generally, when the heat comes, it'll come.
We are going to call this meeting to order. This is Idaho Water Resource Board meeting number 3-23, Friday, March 31st, 2023, originating at the Idaho Water Center and online. The first order of business is roll call.
Mr. Barker?
Here.
Ms. Cole-Hansen? Here. Mr. Gibbs?
Here.
Mr. McMahon?
Here.
Mr. Olmstead?
Here.
Mr. Stevenson?
Here.
Mr. Van Stone?
Here.
And Chairman Raybould.
Here. Okay, thank you, Jennifer. The next item on the agenda is executive session.
Mr. Chair, pursuant to Idaho Code, section 742061, subsection F, I request that the board resolve into executive session to communicate with legal counsel regarding legal ramifications of and legal options for pending litigation or controversies not yet being litigated, but eminently likely to be litigated. I request that a roll call vote be taken and that the secretary record the vote in the minutes of the meeting.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Barker?
Aye.
Ms. Cole-Hansen?
Aye.
Mr. Gibbs?
Aye.
Mr. McMahon?
Aye.
Mr. Olmstead?
Aye.
Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Van Stone?
Aye.
And Chairman Raybould.
Aye. Okay, we are in executive session. I think we need a minute or two to
It's pretty
We
fast.
had a truck driver on our first day shipping potatoes.
Ready?
Pulling his tarp over his truck.
Yeah. Did he make it? That was this year?
But did you have a
That's a happy.
You didn't have a defib there though, or,
We do not.
that's the only way, I mean.
Was it your truck or somebody else's?
Somebody else. Good friend from over here this part of the.
Okay, we're gonna come back to order. We're back in business. The next item on the agenda is board elections.
Mr. Chairman, I have a motion. I would move that the board elect Mr. Raybould as chairman, Ms. Cole-Hansen as vice chair, and Mr. Stevenson as secretary.
Okay, I have a motion. Is there a second?
A second.
Okay. Are there any other nominations or any other motions?
Chairman,
Okay,
I move that the nominations be closed.
okay. There's second.
A second.
That had probably unanimous ballot kind of a thing.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
I
Thank
didn't
you.
hear you. What'd you say?
So what do I have to do? Well, take us into executive session?
You get the script now.
Okay,
It's right here on your agenda.
okay, we can work all that out as we go. Okay, thank you one and all. This is a great board. You guys all do a lot. You work hard and we need to welcome our new members. I was thinking about it, getting ready this morning. This is the first time we've had all 8 board members together since COVID. So it's good to welcome Pat, welcome Mark. Glad to have you on board. I got told that this was a day-and-a-half meeting every other month, and it's turned into a little bit more than that over the years. So plan on rolling up your sleeves and going to work.
I was told a day a month.
Yeah.
It's been 5 or so, or 6 or 7.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is board committee appointments. Mr. Patton.
Okay, if I could have Jennifer pull up that item on the screen. The chair has made proposed committee assignments, and as soon as we get them up on the screen, folks can look at them. And we would be, if folks are happy with those committee assignments, we'd be looking for a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the committee assignments assigned by chair as shown on the agenda.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the committee assignments. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Anybody see anything there that they're violently?
Is that
Opposed?
the only committee?
No, maybe scroll through. Yeah.
So Dean, you're in charge of stabilizing the aquifer from now
I see
on.
that
You
again.
see that?
Yeah.
You see how successful I've been.
I'm the-
It's
I'm the
all-
chair
it's
and the
all
only member
on
of
you.
the advisory.
Yeah,
Number state
okay.
advisor.
Okay,
See, I'm chairman of the Cloud City Committee. I've done a very good job this year. I just want y'all to know.
yeah, okay, all right, well, that's,
Yeah.
soon as you got your confirmation out of the way in the Senate, it started snowing, so we appreciate those efforts.
Pilot got lost and went over into the bear several times.
Been trying to hijack you for years.
Okay, all right, back to business. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is approval of the agenda and minutes. Does anyone, would anyone like to make any changes to the agenda today? And did anyone peruse the minutes of meeting 1-23 and 2-23?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the minutes of meetings 123 and 223.
Okay,
Second.
okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We are down to public comment. Do we have anybody signed up for public comment today?
Give us just 1 second to get the
Okay,
list and bring it up.
as soon as. Sure, put your social security number on there, Doug. Like to welcome the director.
Also understand that Daryl Kerr was going to be on the Zoom call and wanted to address the board during public comment as well.
So
Okay.
no one checked.
No one checked. Is there anyone who signed up that missed checking the boxes here in the meeting room? Is there anyone who wishes to provide public comment? Okay, I understand that we have Daryl Kerr on Zoom that wants to comment, and that would be appropriate at this time, Daryl. Is he there?
I'm not seeing.
Missing in action.
Okay, Daryl not being there, I think that will probably take care of.
Anybody else online?
Is there anybody else online who wishes to provide public comment? Okay, I'm going to take that as a no. We'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the financial report. Is that going to be Neely?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As of January 31st, 2023, the board's available and committed balances are as follows. In the secondary fund, the board has a committed earmark but not dispersed balance of roughly 22.3 million.
Neely, just a second. Maybe you let Jennifer catch up with the.
On the screen, please.
What do you want?
The
Oh.
Financial report on the screen.
Oh.
I wasn't going to share it.
You were trying to get off easy.
There we go. Okay. From the top, Neely.
So in the secondary aquifer fund, the board has a committed earmark but not dispersed balance of roughly 22.3 million and an uncommitted balance of roughly 13.8 million. In the revolving development account, the board has a committed earmark but not dispersed balance of roughly 33 million, a loan principal outstanding of roughly 17 million, an uncommitted balance of approximately 1.6 million, and anticipated loanable funds available over the next year of approximately 5.1 million. In the water management account, the board has an obligated balance of 116.7 million and an unobligated balance of roughly 31.2 million. Taken together, the board's accounts have a total committed earmarked, obligated but not dispersed balance of roughly 172 million, a total loan principal outstanding of 17.1 million, and a total uncommitted, unobligated balance of roughly 46.7 million. And those are the three accounts for the board where you hold the money in your hand. Below this is the ARPA funds. These are the funds that are not really held, but you guys get each year. So the ARPA funds, you have a committed per House Bill 769 of roughly 100 million, and then an obligated balance of 17,060,000, an unobligated balance of roughly 10,067,000, and then an expended balance of roughly 72.9 million. And then I just have a few notes here. The obligated balance in the water management account includes that $20 million legislative appropriation from the fiscal year 2019 for the Anderson Reservoir Enlargement and/or the Mountain Home Air Force Base Water Supply Project. The obligated balance also includes the $50 million for large infrastructure projects per the FY 2021 appropriation, and that was for the Anderson Ranch Enlargement, the Mountain Home Air Force Base Water Supply Project, the ESPA Managed Aquifer Recharge Program, and other projects identified by the board. Then additionally, in the water management account, there's an unobligated balance of 75 million per House Bill 769. That was the FY 2022 appropriation to be used for expenditures, loans, or grants for water projects, including studies to address water sustainability, rehabilitate or improve aging infrastructure, or support flood management. The legislature provided that no more than 1/3 of those monies could be used for grants. And then at the September board meeting in 2022, the board authorized $12.5 million in funds for the aging infrastructure, and that was round one. And then at the January 2023 board meeting, the board authorized another $12.5 million in funds for the aging infrastructure grant program, bringing the total to $25 million. Then in FY 2023, the board has approved roughly $15 million in loans from the revolving development account and approximately $20.1 million in loans from the water management account. And then in FY 2023, $72.9 million roughly has been expended from the ARPA funds for the Anderson Ranch Reservoir enlargement. And with that, I would stand for any questions.
Board members, any questions for Neely? Okay. Oh, I do have one. Ryan.
So the grants from the first and second go round on 2022 are quite a few of those being built now.
They are, yeah. Most of those phase one, the round one, have started the work. Round two, we're just starting to get those contracts in place.
Have we expended any of the aging infrastructure grant money yet, or are we still waiting for invoices to come in?
Mr. Chairman, we have expended some of that aging infrastructure. I believe even maybe one contract has been completely paid out.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Joanne.
Julia, if the Bureau of Reclamation comes back with an updated estimate, and when they have their 30% design in April 20th, I think was the date they threw out.
Mm-hmm.
In our May meeting, would that then show as obligated under the ARPA funds?
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Cole-Hansen, that may be a question for Brian Patton to handle.
Mr. Chairman, Joanne, no, it would not show as unobligated or obligated at that point. The board would have to take an action to commit more funds for that project. The appropriation bill 1181 this year does provide another 50 million in ARPA funds to the board for water projects. So if it does come back at a higher amount, you would have that option.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you, Neely. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Bear River Basin. Send on that. We got Amy online?
Yeah.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Yes, I believe my memo is on page 319 of your meeting materials. So this morning, I do have a resolution for your consideration. Bear River Basin planning activities are ongoing and include a potential settlement agreement to resolve issues related to Bear Lake storage by raising Pacific Core's target elevation for Bear Lake. Raising the target elevation of Bear Lake has implications of increasing flows through the Gentile Valley of the Bear River between the towns of Grace and Thatcher. So flood and flow easements are another issue that need to be addressed and resolved through negotiations amongst the parties. Because the issues are complex and the stakeholders are many, including the states of Utah and Wyoming, Pacific Corp has determined it was in everyone's best interest to hire a neutral third-party facilitator to help resolve the various issues. Clive Strong was chosen by Pacific Corp to facilitate these discussions and work towards a settlement agreement. The resolution before you today is requesting funding of $50,000 to cost share these facilitation services. This contract, it will be between the Idaho Water Resource Board and Pacific Corp. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Any questions for Amy? You know, Amy, looking at this resolution, on line 52, the first, now therefore it be resolved. I'd like to insert the word equitable in front of agreement. We need to make sure if we're going to be paying for this facilitation that we, at least those of us who are doing the work on this, make sure that everybody else participates fairly.
Mhm.
So something along that line, I would suggest that maybe we insert that in to this resolution.
So, Mr. Chairman, would you also want to then use the word up to 50,000?
Yes. Yeah, that's a good catch.
Yes, I can make that change. So let me make sure I understand. Yes, up to 50,000. And equitable, where would you like that? word?
Just right in
Mr.
front of an equitable agreement.
Okay,
Line 53.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, probably be appropriate for the maker of a motion to make a motion with those amendments to that resolution.
Okay. We have a resolution for approval before us. If we could perhaps have a motion to approve the resolution with those changes. Mr. Gibbs.
Mr. Chairman, I would, this resolution with changes discussed, with the addition of up to 50,000 in line 52 and equitable agreement in line 53.
Okay, I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the motion or the resolution? If not, we need a roll call vote if we're gonna spend money.
Mr. Barker,
Aye.
Ms. Cole-Hansen,
Aye.
Mr. Gibbs,
Aye.
Mr. McMahon,
Aye.
Mr. Olmstead,
Aye.
Mr. Stevenson,
Aye.
Mr. Van Stone,
Aye.
and Chairman Raybould.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, anything else, Amy?
no, thank you for pointing out those changes. I will make sure that gets done before it goes to signature.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next item is the Lemhi River Basin Settlement Implementation.
And Amy Castle's gonna take care of that one as well.
Yes, yesterday I had a presentation on the Lemhi River Basin Comprehensive Settlement Agreement and the two resolutions that are before you today for consideration. The first resolution in your materials is a resolution for approval of the Lemhi River Basin Comprehensive Settlement Agreement Implementation Committee Charter. It's a mouthful. And the membership list. As I mentioned yesterday, we had, the board did ask for water users and agency partners that were interested in becoming members. We posted notice to our website and they have expressed interest. So before you is the charter and that membership list that needs to be approved through resolution by the board. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for Amy? We seem to be fine, Amy.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the resolution for the Lemhi Basin Comprehensive Settlement implementation and memberships.
Okay, I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The second resolution, which I also discussed yesterday in the work session, is for the approval of the protocol for the exercise of the Lemhi River at McFarland Campground minimum stream flow water right. And there are some attachments to that resolution. I went over those yesterday. That is the protocol flow chart and the table that explains the flow chart that essentially describes the criteria and the conditions that the steering committee will be looking at each year to determine whether or not the board should exercise the minimum stream flow water right at McFarland. And if there are any questions on that, I will be happy to take those now.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question for Amy, if I could.
You bet. Go ahead.
Amy, is there any dissent to the protocols that you outlined yesterday from the stakeholders in that basin?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Barker, we had a Lemhi Settlement Working Group meeting, and then we had with Clive and Norm present, and we looked at the flow chart then, and that was, I believe, in late February. We had some of the stakeholders present there, and then we had another meeting just a couple weeks ago with Carter Borden and most of the water users that are on that membership list. And we reviewed the flow chart and the table, and they are supportive of it.
Chairman, with that understanding, I would move to approve the flow implementation measure resolution for the Lemhi.
You have a motion. Is there a second? Pat? It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
All right. That takes care of everything you need, Amy?
Yes, that's it for me today. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Okay. Daryl, we were under the understanding that you wanted to take some time during public comment, and we put a little placeholder in there for you if you'd like to come up and share something.
Mr. Chairman, can I just tell you, everybody knows I got a really low IQ, and so I don't have anything in public comment. I was here for the recharge portion of the meeting. Is that fair to say?
Okay, we'll just take care of it then. All right, thank you. Okay,
Next item, Mr. Chairman, is state water plan. I'm going to ask Jennifer to pull up that resolution as well. As you are aware, the board has a desire to review the existing state water plan from 2012 and see if it needs to be updated and probably, make those updates. This resolution would allocate funds up to $100,000 from the secondary aquifer fund to retain Clive Strong to assist as an advisor to the board in that process.
okay. Any questions for Mr. Patton? Okay, and motion would be in order to approve the resolution.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we authorize the chairman to execute the necessary agreements.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Barker,
Aye.
Ms. Cole-Hansen,
Aye.
Mr. Gibbs,
Aye.
Mr. McMahon,
Aye.
Mr. Olmstead,
Aye.
Mr. Stevenson,
Aye.
Mr. Van Stone,
Aye.
and Chairman Raybould.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, Idaho water transactions.
Yes, we're going to have John Lafredo from our staff in Salmon address the board on this topic.
So let me get this straight, John. You come to Boise in person. Amy, I guess, who outranks you, gets to participate via Zoom.
I don't want to throw Amy under the bus, but she has a lot of travel on her plate these days with the Bear River. So kind of a little bit of slack. So yes. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having me today and members of the board.
Welcome.
Just like to, before I begin, just want to direct you guys to page 350 in your workbooks. Bring that up, please, Jennifer. And that is going to be a map of the Lower Lemhi River project area. All right. So yes, for your consideration today, I have a funding resolution for 8 agreements not to divert in the Lower Lemhi River from 2023 to 2025. The Lemhi River once produced over 40% of all Snake River spring, summer run Chinook salmon. And the Lemhi River is also a major salmon river tributary for Snake River steelhead and resident bull trout. All three species are currently listed as threatened under the Endangered Species Act. And the recovery and delisting of these species is not only in the public interest, but recovery would put management of the resource back under state control. And as one part of the overall state strategy for recovery, since 2001, the board has held a minimum streamflow water right at the L6 diversion at River Mile 7 to mitigate impacts to salmonid migration in the lower Lemhi River from lawful irrigation withdrawals. And since 2004, the board has used Bonneville Power Administration dollars through the Columbia Basin Water Transaction Fund, and since 2008, the Idaho MOA Fish Accord Water Transactions Fund to fund short and long-term agreements with lower Lemhi River irrigators to meet the 25 to 35 CFS minimum stream flow for 100 days per irrigation season from March through November. The last group of Lemhi annual agreements to go before the board was in 2019. And since that time, we have had 2 consecutive years of severe water shortages in Lemhi River, much like the rest of the across the state. And those water shortages exhausted subordination contract days, which required emergency drought response contracts to prevent a dewatering event at L6. So for 2023 to 2025, we propose securing 15.29 CFS for 100 days, 4.11 CFS for 20 days, and 5 CFS for 30 days. And when you combine that with the 19.5 CFS that is permanently protected for 100 days per irrigation season through long-term agreements, there will be 43.95 CFS available to meet the 25 to 35 CFS minimum stream flow for the next 3 irrigation seasons. And this will not only allow subordination of senior water rights to meet the minimum stream flow for over 100 days if needed, but it'll also give the Water District 74 Water Master more flexibility, excuse me, to rotate subordination amongst water users to minimize impacts to agricultural production, and also hopefully encourage more participation in the program in the long run. Compensation for the 2023 to 2025 Lemhi annual agreements will be based on $100 per CFS per day, subordinated to the minimum stream flow. And this transaction has already been submitted for the Northwest Power Council's Technical Advisory Committee review through the Columbia Basin Water Transaction Program, and will be funded through the Idaho MOA Fish Accord Water Transactions Fund, which the state of Idaho just signed an extension with BPA through 2025. So with this background information, the resolution before you all today would authorize the board chairman or designee to enter into agreements with the lower Lemhi River irrigators to not divert out of the Lemhi River using a total amount not to exceed $528,360. And this resolution also provides the exercise of these agreements is subject to the condition that the board receives the requested funding through Bonneville Power Administration through the Idaho MOA Accord Water Transaction Fund in an amount not to exceed $528,360. And with that, I'll stand for any questions, and thank you again for your consideration.
Board members, any questions? Brian?
What was your percentage again of the salmon and steelhead that previously spawned in the Lemhi?
Mr. Chairman, a member Brian Olmstead. So it's understood that historically the Lemhi River produced over 40% of all spring run Chinook salmon for the Snake River.
Chairman, I have a question on the resolution. Do we need to have the language in there about $100 per 24-hour CFS, or is that it's not in the resolution itself, but it's in the background materials? That's something we need or not need, Brian?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Barker, I don't think it needs to be in the now therefore be it resolved. That it's background, and that would be carried through into the individual contracts.
Okay, any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the resolution to make the funding commitment for the agreements not to divert in the Lemhi not to exceed $528,360.
Okay, I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the motion or the resolution? If not, we'll proceed to vote. Could we have a roll call vote, Jennifer?
Mr. Barker,
Aye.
Ms. Cole-Hansen,
Aye.
Mr. Gibbs,
Aye.
Mr. McMahon,
Aye.
Mr. Olmstead,
Aye.
Mr. Stevenson,
Aye.
Mr. Van Stone,
Aye.
and Chairman Raybould.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay,
Thank you, Ward.
thank you. You did great on your first appearance. I hope we don't appear too intimidating because we certainly are not. Okay, next up, Mountain Home Air Force Base Water Resilience Project.
Mike Morrison will give us an update on where that project is at.
So while you're getting set up, I was watching a documentary, I think I recorded off of PBS about George W. Bush. I got to the part where he landed on the carrier with the mission accomplished sign. Are we gonna have a mission accomplished sign that we can hang out at Mountain Home in about 3 years?
Mr. Chairman, that was quite cold.
Yeah.
If we do have a mission accomplished, Mr. Chairman, it will really be accomplished. So-
Mike, I don't think anybody's gonna throw a shoe at you anyway.
If we want an aircraft carrier, they're going to do it.
Yeah. You're gonna have to put some locks through Hell's Canyon if you're gonna get an aircraft carrier up here.
I need bigger locks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Director Spackman, I'd like to provide a brief update on the status of the Mountain Home Air Force Base Water Resilience Project. And for those of you who are kind of new to this, the Mountain Home Air Force Base Water Resilience Project is a collaborative effort between the board and the United States Air Force intended to provide a reliable water supply from Snake River near CJ Strike River Reservoir to the Mountain Home Air Force Base. Under the terms of a 2021 Memorandum of Understanding between the board, the governor of Idaho, and the Air Force, the board will construct transmission facilities consisting of an intake and pumping station at CJ Strike Reservoir and a pipeline that will deliver water to a water treatment plant that will be constructed at the Air Force Base by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And then since the last time we met in January, staff and Brown and Caldwell have completed a market sounding that will be used to determine the project delivery method that is compatible with local construction and market conditions. We've been working with stakeholders to obtain easements and rights of way for the pipeline. The effort is still ongoing. And yesterday, Mr. Oakbear, myself and another engineer from Brown and Caldwell visited the proposed pump station, walked the proposed route from the pump station to the top of the canyon, and inspected the remainder of the 14.4 mile alignment from the pump station to Mountain Home. We'll be using this information to refine preliminary design details that will be used when the board solicits a firm to design and construct the project. But do you have any questions for me at this time?
Any questions? Mark?
What's the diameter of the pipe you're supposed to put in this project?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Gibbs, at the moment, 18 inches probably is correct. It'll be give or take an inch from that. So any other questions? Yeah.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, Mike, so you said the right of ways are still undergoing. Do you anticipate any right of way issues, or do you think you've got it pretty well secured?
We currently, in a couple of places, there may be some issues, and in those cases, we kind of have a plan B lined up right now. So.
Okay. Any other questions? Dean?
If you would venture guess, when would you be able to start construction?
This would be end of calendar year 2024, probably right around there. Or actually, Mr. Oakbear is going to give a little bit better version of the schedule for me.
Okay. Probably ready to proceed then? Yeah.
Oh.
I think we're gonna move on to the presentation now, right?
You bet.
Okay.
Okay, so the board has retained the services of an owner's advisor, Brown and Caldwell, to assist in the selection of the qualified design firm to help manage the project, and they're going to help us manage the project. I'd like to turn the time over to Vincent Roquebert, team lead at Brown and Caldwell, to give a short presentation on what they've been up to.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, member of the board. My name is Vincent Roquebert. I am with Brown and Caldwell, and I am delighted today to be back in Idaho. I left 12 years ago to update you on the Mountain Home Air Force Base Water Resilience Project. So I will share with you the initial milestone timeline. Then we will talk about the market sounding, what we learn, the action items we are going to take from the market sounding, and the impact on the timeline of the project. So what is the timeline of the project? Right now, we are in the procurement phase. We are working on the request for qualification that is to be issued to the practitioners beginning of May. Then we plan on having the design builder shortlisted beginning of July and issue a request for proposal beginning of August. The initial goal was to have the design builder on board by the beginning of February 2024 in order to get a final completion 22 months later in November, but also be able to provide water in July to help with the commissioning of the water treatment plant that is currently, being built under the supervision of the Air Force. So market sounding, why did we do a market sounding? First, to provide a high-level information to the industry about the project and the board goals. With all the projects that are going to be designed and built in the next years, we need to get interest of the practitioner for our project in order to be able to select a qualified team. Also, we cannot work in a vacuum, and the market sounding serve as a basis for receiving industry feedback on a variety of questions and topics associated with the project. We talk about the contract conditions, we talk about the schedule, we talk about the constraint of the project. We invited 20 practitioners to participate to the market sounding. We conducted 8 calls the week of February 27. Each call was limited to 45 minutes, and the participant input and feedback have been aggregated in order to get anonymous feedback. And the major issue that was raised by the practitioners was the schedule. And so we thought about that, and we thought about what could we do to improve the schedule, what could we do to make the practitioner more comfortable with the schedule. Okay. No. And so after this market sounding, we came with 2 main action items. The first one is to use and edit contract conditions that are well accepted in the construction industry for design build project. Here, the concept is to minimize the time we are going to spend developing the contract condition and minimize the time we are going to spend to negotiate the contract condition by using, contract conditions that are well accepted in the industry. And one of the avenues is to use the contract form that has been developed by the Design Build Institute of America. The second approach is, in order to make the practitioners more comfortable with the schedule, is to use price indices and share the risk on schedule item that design builder cannot control directly, reference to the high inflation we currently unfortunately have. So what are the impact? I would say the positive impact on the schedule. By doing that, we are going to be able to issue the RFP earlier, mid-July, and select the design builder by the end of the year in order to have a notice to proceed early January 2024. This is increasing, the time that is allocated to design and construction to 23.5 months, but also increasing the time that is required to bring some water for the commissioning of the water treatment plant to 19.5 months. So this time is considered more realistic, and also this release on the constraint on the project is going to bring more interest, from the practitioners, and allow us to have a better chance to select a qualified team for the project. After that, I will open to questions.
Questions, Joanne?
Mr. Chair. When you say use price indices and share risk on schedule items, what does that mean exactly? Does that mean that
we are going to include, a formula as part of the contract that is going to cover the increase in price based on the.
So the exposure of price increases on the whole project, the board will be liable for, or there are just certain components like equipment components and those kind of things.
It's
The
mainly
actual construction
related.
itself, we're going to get that part of it locked down.
Yes, I mean, Mr. Chairman, I think it's mainly related to the equipment, because that's where we see, in fact, the increase in price.
Okay, I think that answers my question, that it's not just going to be wide open.
No, and we will have limit, we will negotiate, an equation, in fact, in order to agree with a potential increase in price.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Brian?
So you had interviews with 8 or information sessions with 8 of the possible. Did you feel like several of those would make a request? Do a request proposal, or can other people still that were not in that initial interview process still be in the proposals?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Olmstead, the market sounding was not binding, so anybody that didn't participate is going to be allowed to participate and to respond to the RFQ. But we were really pleased by the people that respond, to our request, and we think that we have good team, we have local team. We have also, people that have been interested with the water treatment plant, but are also interested with the transmission system. So we are confident that the people we interview are ready to go after the project, and yes.
Okay, other questions? Okay, I think we're happy to have you on board advising us. Appreciate your efforts to shorten the timeline and get this project completed on the schedule that we have to have it completed by, and look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, all right. Flood management grants?
Yeah, Neely Miller will walk us through that item related to the flood management grant criteria.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Today, I'll be presenting you with a resolution for your consideration. This would be to update the flood management grant criteria. Just as a little background, the board has operated a flood management grant program for the past 5 years. It began as a one-off each year for the first few years, and then recently it's become an ongoing program. In the upcoming budget for the upcoming fiscal year, there should be $1 million that'll go into the board's water management account for the flood management grant program. And so with that, I would direct your attention to the resolution I've prepared, and this is in the matter of flood management grants, a resolution to adopt criteria. And I would just briefly highlight the criteria that is up on the screen. Again, this is for grants for flood damage stream channel repair, stream channel improvement projects, flood risk reduction projects, and flood prevention projects. It's a statewide grant program that requires a 50-50 cost share. No more than 50% of the $1 million can be spent within any one single board district. Awards could be up to $200,000 per project. You can submit multiple applications. The staff has developed a point system, 135 point scale system for evaluating and ranking these projects against each other. And then staff has proposed a deadline of the first Friday of June for applications. This year, that would be June 2nd, 2023. And then staff would propose that the finance committee have a meeting sometime in mid-July, early July, to consider staff ranking of those flood grant applications with anticipated funding awards at the July board meeting. And with that, I would stand for any questions on this criteria or on my presentation today.
Okay, any questions for Neely on the criteria or the resolution to approve? Dean?
So the criteria, and I don't remember if this has been in here before, but the one part where it said it's got to be started within November of, it's a little higher up in there. Could you move that back just a little bit? It says funding amount, funding award may be reallocated unless flood management work begins prior to the November 1 of the following funding award. So that would be that year, or whether it be the following year.
I think when we built this into this criteria, and that has been in there in prior years, it was it was looking at this current year, and it was really to make sure that folks were ready to move forward. So if they weren't, the board could reallocate those funds. But we've been very flexible. Usually if they've just reached out to us and say they're in the planning phase or they're doing any activity, we've basically never enforced that because there hasn't been a reason to.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve these criteria for the flood management grant program.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll have a vote where this potentially will involve money eventually. We'll have a roll call vote.
Mr. Barker,
Aye.
Ms. Cole-Hansen,
Aye.
Mr. Gibbs,
Aye.
Mr. McMahon,
Aye.
Mr. Olmstead, Mr. Stevenson,
Aye.
Mr. Van Stone,
Aye.
and Chairman Raybould.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay,
We're going to keep Neely up there to discuss the regional water sustainability projects priority list.
okay, Neely.
Good morning again, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I just highlight here that there's no action on this item requested at this time. This is really just an update. Staff was provided some guidance by the Finance Committee last week, and I'll include that in my update. Just a little background, particularly for the newer board members. In July of 2021, the board adopted an initial regional water sustainability priority list to help guide the board's spending for large regional water sustainability projects, particularly from ARPA funds, state general funds, or other applicable sources. Then later in 2022, the board adopted a threshold criteria that said that for a project to be included on that list, it must help achieve water sustainability on a regional, basin-wide, or statewide basis. And moving forward to October 26, 2022, the board adopted a criteria for how projects can be included on that list. And that included ways for projects to be added and how to be removed. And then included the information that would need to be submitted for those requests to be considered by the board. The board then at this January 2023 meeting considered those requests. There were 15 requests to be either added or remain on that list and to clarify their needs. The board updated that list at the January 2023 meeting. And now staff is proposing a path forward for how the board can address this list. So with that said, staff has proposed to the Finance Committee that the Finance Committee would solicit presentations from project sponsors that have a project on the list. And then they would solicit a presentation that included specific information about that, as well as what the type of assistance they are looking for from the board. At the March Finance Committee last week, the Finance Committee authorized staff to solicit some additional information from project sponsors. This information would be used to focus on the readiness to proceed and the status of the project in the planning and permitting phase. And staff would utilize this information in combination with previously submitted information to help the board prioritize and, I think more importantly, categorize these projects and requests. And so with that, staff has developed a short questionnaire that we are sending out as we speak to gather some additional information about projects to help categorize projects into basically two categories. Projects that are construction ready, and generally speaking, we're thinking here that they're ready to go to construction in the next 12 months. And then these others that are in the planning or feasibility phase, and these would be all the steps that take place before you get to that 12 months to construction. This would allow the board to then approach these two categories, projects that may need assistance for planning and feasibility funding. And there may be a way to address that in some sort of cost share approach. Staff plans to propose that at an upcoming meeting and put some parameters on that, as well as then addressing projects that are ripe for construction and allowing the board to hear those requests for those that are ready to move within the next 12 months. So basically is what you have on the screen there, and I know that's hard to see, but this kind of gives a sense of how staff will be categorizing some of these projects and how some of this additional information we'll solicit will be utilized. But here's an example of just 4 projects and then some columns there with the information that we'll be including. And again, these are yes or no's answers. So we've included there zeros or ones for most of those other than the board district column. But the types of information, is it ARPA fundable? That's a useful category. And then some of these others are the criteria that was required to get on the list in the first place. But then there's some other criteria here that's related to the readiness to proceed, the planning phase, the work on permits, and then, do these meet governor, legislator, or board priorities? So staff will utilize that updated information to develop this ranking and categorization spreadsheet, which then we would present to the board in an upcoming meeting, I think at a finance committee, potentially in May. I'd work with Madam Chair of the Finance Committee on that to then bring something to the board to consider at the May board meeting on that. And that would be a path forward for you to address these requests starting in the summer. So with that, I would stand for any questions.
Hey, any questions for Neely? Brian?
Neely, so I just have a question on the ARPA, because we don't know how much ARPA funds we're gonna have, because we don't know how much Mountain Home and Anderson Ranch will take. So do we know that we'll have some of these projects are ready to go now, but they're hoping to get some ARPA funds, or do we have to wait?
I think we will have ARPA funds because I think when we start to look at some of these that are ready to go, there's not that many that are ready to move within 12 months. And I may let Brian Patton clarify that answer, since he has a perspective on some of these ARPA funds.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Brian. Yeah, so we are at this point thinking that the board should have some ARPA funds beyond what the Mountain Home and Anderson Ranch projects will take. It would be the board's, up to the board then to mix and match the allocation of those ARPA funds relative to the state appropriated funds for these various large projects.
So to follow up, Mr. Chairman, Brian, then if they qualify for ARPA and we think we have some, that could actually count as match for our sustainability funds. Or the ARPA funds considered state also?
They would be, Mr. Chairman, Brian, I think they would be considered state also.
So they still have the same match requirement from their own pocket.
Right, and many of the projects that are on that priority list, some can qualify for ARPA, but they can also qualify for the state appropriated funds. So again, it'd be up to the board to kind of mix and match those two sources.
Just to further clarify, I think the board needs to look at all the funding options we have available and see how we can best utilize both the ARPA dollars and the general fund dollars and move that money to the projects as expeditiously as we can and let those projects move forward. So there'll be some combination probably funding of general fund money and ARPA money on some projects. Some projects may be solely ARPA funded, but I think we have the ability to combine dollars, and we just need to look at our total allocated dollars, including ARPA, and make the best use of those funds. Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. We will wait to hear a further report on how we're doing with our sustainability list.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Neely. Okay. ESPA recharge.
Yep, and I believe Wesley has a brief update for us, and I think, do you have a resolution today? I do have a resolution.
There we go.
There. Good morning, Chairman and members of the board. So going to go through a ESPA managed recharge program update. And so I'll try and make this as short as I can. Covering a fair amount of stuff. What I want to start with is as far as the current recharge season. And so in the lower valley, off the Snake River, we stopped recharge yesterday. Northside Canal turned on, and that put our water right out of priority. And so to give you an idea, as far as the recharge in the areas that we've done, so we're currently a little over 131,000 for this year. The medium diversion's been around 380. The bulk of that has gone to the Milepost 31 site at almost 89,000, with Northside taking 10,000 early on in the season, and then 14,000 at Twin Falls and Southwest Irrigation District. Now, you'll notice another little dot up here, and that's the Big Wood Canal Company. Now, most of the recharge has gone to the Jones site, but we've also recharged off of the Richfield site, which is up in here. If you can see where my mouse is at. So currently we're at 2,000 acre feet of recharge off the Littlewood River, and that started on March 15th, and that's going currently. Now with this recharge on April 1st, for this right to be in priority, 80 CFS has to be going past Station 10, which I realize a lot of you don't know where that's at. It's right up here where the canal crosses the Littlewood, basically, or how it looks on the map. Starting on April 1st, there has to be 350 CFS going past it. So that will probably turn us off. There's not that much going past right now. However, we have a license that can start on April 1st and go until about the middle of the month, if I remember correctly. So we'll have a chance to do some more recharge off of that. That's limited to a little over 2,000 acre feet. So hopefully that'll carry us into, if it starts warming up, things start flowing better, there'll be more water to recharge on that system. In talking with Kevin Fakey, the canal manager for Big Wood Canal Company, we're not, at this point in time, he's not expecting Magic to have any flood releases. They have a pretty big hole that they're filling up. And so with the late season, they're hoping they can use it all. So to give you an idea, this is the chart you've all seen before. Gives an idea of the recharge season as a whole. The big woods, this brown over on this end, over here. This is kind of in the middle. It's when we let 200 CFS go past. That's kind of a wrap up for the season to give you an idea of how this compares with other seasons. We're still holding out chance. You'll notice a little asterisk on 2022 to 2023, and we're hoping maybe we'll get some more later on, sort of thing. But as of right now, this is what it looks like. As far as recharge and water availability, it's been kind of another dry year. So total to date, as of right now, since 2014, we've recharged a little over 2 million acre feet with an average of 235. Now, for those of you that remember last year, we were at 248. But again, with another kind of dry year, only doing 130, that's dropped that average down. So with that, before I move on, are there any questions about the current recharge season?
Questions for Wes? I think we can move on.
We'll move on.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, we do have one.
Just had one. So if there happens to be some spills on Magic, do we have sites that could be operable there?
Yes. So if there's spills off of the Big Wood, we have the Devil's Head Gate site.
Okay.
And then we have the Ridgefield site. And then depending on flows in the Littlewood, and if they're spilling from there, it's very likely we'll also be able to use the Shoshone site.
Okay.
So looking at a total of around 200 CFS, depending.
Mr. Chairman, Wes, are we using the Shoshone site today? Is it still
Yes.
on?
Yep.
Okay. Is it going to be able to stay on, or will it go off?
It will, as of right now, it will, I think we can keep it on to the middle of April, as long as the Littlewood stays kind of where it's at now. That's using our current permit and the license.
Okay.
Okay. All right, we move on.
Okay. So I'm gonna start talking about some of the projects we're working on, and a lot of you have seen this before. And this is just kind of, it's a very simple look at where our focus is on developing future capacity. And this really stems from requests from the board that we really start looking at expanding the capacity, especially in the Upper Valley. And so for the last few years, that's where our focus has been. Because in the Upper Valley, we don't have a lot of off-site capacity. If the water turns on early enough in the season, the canals can take a lot of water. But starting about mid-April, when those canals start running irrigation water, we can't use them to do recharge. So we need more off-canal sites. And we really looked at both the short, medium, and long-term aquifer response. In the lower valley, from this point out, We have around 2,000 CFS capacity for our offsite, so we're pretty well developed down there. It's just going to be if there's opportunistic sites we can develop, and if we can diversify our locations. So moving on to, here's our projects we currently have funded. All of these have been funded utilizing ARPA money. So we're adding another recharge well for the Southwest Irrigation District and replacing one that went out of commission. There's Minidoka Irrigation District's project, the Going Some. And we have the Swan Highway project. And all of those projects are ongoing. We started to spend the ARPA money on these, and with the Going Some, they're hoping to start actually moving some dirt this spring. Swan Highway is also started. The Southwest Irrigation District is, we're working through the contract, and those wells will probably go in this spring also. So the last one's the Hemer Road project, and especially for the new board members, starting back in 2018, the board directed us to start looking at the Upper Valley at, okay, where can we develop more recharge capacity? And especially looking at large sites from 150 CFS to higher. So back in 2018, staff did a lot of work. Back in 2020, we hired a contractor. They did more work, better to be find these sites. And out of the 3 sites that we looked at, wow, that's the first time my voice didn't carry. That's cool. So out of the 3 sites we looked at, this one had the most potential. It was gravity fed. It was in a good place to do recharge. So this project was moving forward, and I tentatively say was moving forward. We ran into a little hiccup. Is a year ago, we met with BLM concerning the site. At that point in time, everything looked good. There was potential issues, but nothing that we couldn't overcome. Once we submitted the application, we met with them again, and we were informed that they couldn't do any easements on that land. So right now that project's on hold. We're kind of going after a couple different directions. Is we have some people looking at what are our options dealing with BLM, and hope to hear with those, actually I'm hoping today or early next week. The other thing that we've also looked at is, are there other options in this area? And we believe that there are, that we could move forward in this area, but I want to inform the board that at this point in time, we're going to have to wait and see what we can work out with BLM, and if that's something we can overcome. Are there any questions about that?
Questions for Wes?
Okay. So, going to move on from there. So besides the large projects, the other thing we've been looking at is where else can we develop small projects? And the board members have seen this map before. What all the little triangles show is these are all the potential recharge sites that we know about. And I hesitate here because actually I know it's missing a few. One of the things I want to demonstrate here is all those triangles that you see on this map. Staff have been boots on the ground at all of those different sites over the past 8-10 years, actually. So a lot of sites to look at. There's been a lot of different issues we've had to deal with on moving forward, but we started kind of slimming those down and looking at far as that short, medium, and long-term potential. So we broken them up. I'll be showing a map in a little bit that will have some dots on it with color coordination on it. And the short term, the kind of tier 1, is that quick response time that we heard a lot about yesterday. where that water's in the aquifer, like, 1.5 years or less. There's the mid tier, which is a little longer. And then there's our tier 3, which is even longer than that. So it kind of gives you an idea when you see the colored dots on the map of what kind of response that they're going to have to the stream and the response to the aquifer. Okay, so going to start off with the Aberdeen-Springfield area down at the bottom here. And we've been looking in this area for quite a while. There's a lot of opportunities. There's opportunities to partner with different groups. There's a lot of interest in that. And we're exploring that and working with some of them on seeing what projects we can actually get moving forward there. Fair amount of potential capacity here, 150 to 300 CFS. There is one recharge site that Aberdeen-Springfield has called the Hilton Spill in this area. And the recharge impact is below where basically 20%, 26% of the water that's recharged in this area returns within 4 months, 50% returns within 1 year. So moving up, New Sweden, working, they're looking at developing a recharge site. And they tested this site last September. Very positive test out of that. New Sweden has actually talked with the landowner of purchasing some land to give us a reasonable size basin. And actually, we should have a proposal from them in April. Estimates at this, I'm not going to say what the estimates is. I'm going to wait for the proposal on that, and we'll see how best to move forward with that project. And you see the recharge impacts there. And if there's any questions on any of these as I'm going through them, please stop me. So next is the Snake River Valley Irrigation District. So they currently have some recharge sites, basins that we've used in the past. Looking at something a little bit different. With all those triangles that you've seen on the map, we've looked at a lot of different areas and had a hard time getting traction on moving those forward. So one of the things we're looking at in a couple different areas is injection wells. And so they're working on a proposal. Again, we should have that this next month. And so the plan is that we're going to test the area, put an injection well in, and see how well it does. If it works, then we'll build out a fuller size site with more capacity. And it gives you some of the ideas of, as far as the return, with these smaller canals up here, one of the things we're always looking at is what is the capacity of the canal? And is that something that we're going to have to look at improving if we develop a recharge site there? In this case, basically that canal is good to go as far as the capacity that would be available. So that we should have the proposal here in April. And if it kind of fits with everything we're looking at, we'll probably move forward with that.
Wes, maybe you could kind of give us a capacity estimate on each of these, or maybe when you get completed with the presentation, after you've gone through all of them, kind of give us an estimate of what the potential capacity of building out multiple small sites might be.
Do you want total or on the sites we're talking about here?
Well, these sites we're talking about, I mean, if we were to develop all these dots on this map, how much additional recharge capacity would that give us in the Upper Valley?
I can definitely give you an estimate.
That's all I'm asking for. I'm not.
One of the things, like with these injection wells, one of the advantage of using wells is you don't need a very big footprint. So that makes a lot easier to put them in. And part of the reason we're doing the test is in some areas where we've done the injection wells, you can get a really high recharge capacity, like 10 CFS per well. Now, when you're dealing with some alluvium, from my experience down in Arizona and other places, alluvium wells, if you're doing 5 CFS, you're doing good. Part of the reason that we're testing this is to get a handle of how much can we do. So with this site, what we're looking at, if the test carries through, we're looking at 50 CFS of developing here, with the potential that it takes less of a footprint. If this really works, they probably have other areas that we could build that out more. This canal has a lot of capacity that we wouldn't have to do any other work, so it could be much larger. That's why I apologize for hesitating, but it's just, I'm going with 50 CFS. There's potential for a lot more.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the next one we're looking at is progressive irrigation district, and same sort of thing. Here, we're actually going to be putting in 2 injection wells, one to test that upper zone, one to test the lower, and to see how well they will do. Because then we can look at, is this going to be economical as far as the cost of the wells and how much recharge capacity we'll actually get out of them. We have a cost proposal in from them. We're looking at drilling the wells and testing them this spring. So the plan is to spend $100,000, and in the secondary fund budget under the ESP recharge program, there's an investigating line item. And so that's where the money would come out of to pay for these projects. So we can get a fairly quick turnaround, get an idea of how well they're going to work. And if they work, then we're going to develop a full scale project and come back to the board for approval. So the other one is Madison County, the Teton Island.
That's before you go on.
Yes.
On the progressive, are these just test wells? And that if you were going to drill a well that was going to be used as a injection well, you'd have to do another well?
No, we are, these are test injection wells. And so they're injection wells that we're using to test the concept out and make sure it's going to work.
You're gonna drill a full capacity well and then see how much water you can pour down it. And if it takes water, then you build out the injection field.
That is absolutely correct. Okay, so the this is with Madison. It's Teton Island Falls Feeder Canal. Sorry, it's the Madison County site. And again, this is to test the viability and impact of recharging in this area. This area has a lot of potential, and it also has some concerns of fairly high water tables. The depth of water can be around 30. Before I go on to that, one thing I want to mention is there's also a flood management grant for this that's been funded. And that's for diverting in between from 50 to 1,500 CFS. And the grant was for 126,000. Now, as far as the project goes, why I'm for funding this one is you have a lot of gravel pits in this area. And actually, this is a really big one. And so the project we're looking at funding, 210,000. This would be out of the investigating funds. And it's for 30 CFS. And so basically this dark blue area is what we would really be looking at testing. There is a lot more potential here. So even if you develop this one and the flood grant is actually for over on the east side for the South Fork of the Teton River, even if both sites went in, that site's for flood control. There's potential for doing recharge. Doing this site's going to give us a good idea of if that's even feasible. For a smaller volume, we believe it's going to work, but we really want to test out the high water table and kind of see how that works. And to make sure, for a larger volume, there's questions. And this will help us test this area and this concept to see if it's going to work and how much potential there is in this area. If it's something that works, you can kind of see the hint both to the north and to the south of this map. There's a lot of gravel pits in there. So it has potential. It's worth testing out.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Wes, I'm not sure I understand the relationship between the flood control project and the recharge project. So is the flood control project going to be diverted out of the South Fork or out of the canal?
Out of the South Fork of the Teton River.
Okay, so that location goes into the same pit, but the diversion's not shown on your chart, on your map.
I did not put that on. That is correct. And so it's down in this corner here. I don't know if you can see. So basically where the south part of it is, you go straight in, that's where their diversion would be. And the difference would be, so the depth of this basin actually ranges in between 20 foot is what we would, is how deep it would be in this dark blue area. It can go up to around 60 to 70 feet if we flood the whole area.
Maybe just to help clarify a little bit, Madison County is utilizing this as a flood control site. They think that they can divert for a short period of time a large volume of water out of the Teton River to prevent flooding down in the Sugar City area, which would be to the west of this project. If there were some sort of a flash rain or rain on snow event or something, it would give them the latitude to divert a lot of water for a short period of time, or I suppose a lesser amount for a little longer period of time. But it's just a real quick fix occasionally for flood control. What Wes is proposing is taking water out of the canal and metering that in at a constant amount to get a steady state that he thinks would be about 30 CFS.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
And so, sorry for my ignorance about the project, but so why couldn't you just use the flood control infrastructure to use for recharge on top of or in addition to the time period that the county is using it for flood?
Well, one of the things that Fremont Madison Irrigation District has some concerns about putting the gates low enough into the riverbank on the flood control project that they may leak water that otherwise should go on down the river to be diverted for irrigation. And so they're asking that those gates be put higher in the riverbank so that when they're doing a flood control operation, they would harvest off the top of the river flow rather than the bottom of the river flow. So I'm not sure that those gates would allow for diversion under regular operations. But that's something I guess we could look at. But.
And that's part of it is there's a lot of complexity to this site. I apologize for not explaining it clear enough. This provides us an opportunity to really test this area and see, is it going to work for recharge along with flood control? This is going to kind of give us a hint into that. With the flood control sites, the best of my knowledge, they have not started work on that yet. And the advantage of us putting this in, besides what the chairman's mentioned, is it's going to give us a good idea of just how much this site can take. So even if they do the other site, potentially we could use both of them and use the full capacity of the basin and not just part of it. Mr. Chairman, Board Member Barker, does that help any?
I understand your explanation. I think it's worth looking at to see if we can use existing infrastructure rather than building new stuff.
All this would be new. The flood control stuff does not exist at this point in time.
No, I mean, but there's already money to do that work with.
Right.
We're spending additional money on top of that if we can take advantage of the infrastructure that the flood control project is using, we ought to at least consider doing that. If there are technical reasons why we can't, we shouldn't, I understand, but we ought to at least think about it.
Absolutely.
Joanne?
Why is it that the water table is so high in this area?
It has to do with the geology of the area. There's some clays in this area that have the tendency of raising it up. If you start moving to the west, that water table actually starts dropping off fairly quickly. So we're kind of right on an edge, and that's partly where just don't know how this is going to respond here.
Well, you're in the proximity of two rivers, right up at the top, right under the word island is the North Fork of the Teton River, I believe. And it's all kind of gravelly. And it just, that's where the water table is.
I just was wondering if it's gonna make it down to recharge, or is it gonna sit up there and evaporate?
Oh, no, it eventually works its way down into the regional aquifer, but it's kind of I would say that 30-foot water level is not the regional aquifer. That's a perched water table that eventually works its way into the regional aquifer.
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Cole-Hansen, that is absolutely correct. And that's the question that we have is how quick does it move off? Does it move off quick enough, or does it mound up? If it mounds up, it's not going to take any water. So we just don't have a good sense of how this aquifer is going to work in this area. Hence why we want to test it.
Chairman,
Dean,
we took a visit there in September, or when was it?
August, September, yes.
Sometime. It's hot, remember that day. But that's a big pit, and it's a deep pit. And so I think one of the issues with coming across what Fremont Madison's concerned about is it's amazing how far right next to that pit, right next to the river, it's a pretty deep deal. And the reason they don't want to take a chunk out of that, you could lose the river into the pit. And that's a concern they have. But, you know, for flooding, but that is a pretty big area, and there's a little bit of water in the bottom, but, you know, for the cost, this could be, you know, what the capacity could end up being, could be a fairly cheap route to go. They'd have to move some stuff. Well, I think that pit's abandoned though, isn't it?
It is still being used.
yeah, it's
Part of it.
Madison County still, it's an active.
There's kind of two pieces to it though, I think, yeah.
Yeah, that what we're proposing here would not interfere
Yeah,
with
we can
Madison
get the other
County.
side.
Yeah.
If they use it for flood control, they'd have to move everything out.
That's correct.
If there's no other questions, I'll move on. Okay, so the last one I'm going to talk about is the 55th road site. A lot of the board members have seen this site numerous times. It's on the South Fork area. You get an idea of what the impact of the recharge is. If it's approved for construction, they would actually start this spring, summer. So this is the site. It's 8.62 acres. Potential capacity of 45 CFS. Some different responses back to the rivers is there. The estimated cost for this site is 1.7 million, and this would be paid out of ARPA funds if the board approves. And this is, you have a resolution in your books for this site. Any other questions about this site?
Any questions on this? Dean?
So if they had some, is it Willow Creek that comes out near there?
Yep.
In a flood situation in the spring, could you get water from Willow Creek into this?
Yes.
Okay. So if they're evacuating Ryrie for reasons, you could get it into this. Okay.
Yes.
Just want to make sure.
And Daryl Kerr is here
Okay.
from Enterprise Canal Company, that he could answer those questions better than I could. But yes, you can.
Okay. Daryl, do you want to come and explain the nuances of this project to us?
Darrell Kerr. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board and Director Spackman. Mr. Chairman, if it'd be okay, I'd like to welcome your two newest members to the board and welcome them here. And from my personal recollection and associations we've had over the years, I think they'll be a tremendous asset to the water board. And so I appreciate their experience, appreciate them being here. Mr. Chairman, I don't have a lot to say about this, but this is a really good site. It's deep. I think it's around 35 feet deep. We want to fix a little bit in the bottom, move some earth around a little bit. This site, when it gets done and completed with earth moved and removed, will hold a capacity of about 120 million gallon water. And we can directly take that water right off Willow Creek in case of a flood. Brian Stevens called me from the Bureau this last week and said, Darrell, we need to be able to move some water. Can we move some water to your spot? And I said, I don't have it approved, Brian. So anyway, Ryrie's got a good watershed or snowpack. This is a phenomenal spot because the earth has not had any construction debris put in it, any out of character. It's just pure gravel and dirt on the top. If there's any questions there, Mr. Chairman, I just have one other comment I'd like to make.
Any questions on this project for Mr. Kerr? Brian?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Darrell, wasn't there another site real close to this one too that we're looking at?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Olmstead. Yes, and we have not had the opportunity to get to that point right now. We've had a lot of snow, and so we've been working on it collectively. And I haven't presented that to Wesley yet for his approval, but will hopefully come spring. If we get spring up there, if we get spring.
Another project, another year.
Another project, another year.
Okay, further comments?
Mr. Chairman, I want to compliment the water board, the director and staff. I know it's no big deal to anyone else, but because of the swift actions of Neely, Wesley, and Justin, and staff included, because we were given money to develop and go forward on our aging infrastructure and develop recharge, you know, we was able to make commitments on pipe. And so here's the math. It's not a big deal to anybody, but it is to me. Because of the swift action, and I appreciate the staff and members of the board. By the time we made a commitment on pipe and we had given our commitment, Mr. Chairman, 2 weeks after that date, the same pipe went up $463,000. And because of the swift actions of staff and the water board, we were able to secure our position and save the $463,000. So, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, on behalf of the patrons and people that I represent, over 210 patrons, I might have a couple that don't agree, but out of 210 participating patrons, I just think it's appropriate, Mr. Chairman, that I tell you and tell the board and staff, thank you so much, because $463,000 is a huge amount of money. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Darrell.
So there's nothing else, then it would be on if you have any questions about the resolution.
Let's pull up the resolution and make sure everybody has a chance to look at that before we get too carried away here.
If you bring it up, please, Jennifer.
There we go. Okay, what do we got here, Wes? Yeah.
With these, Mr. Chairman, with these resolutions, we're committing ARPA funds. There's an awful lot of boilerplate that goes into these.
Appreciate that. Okay. Everybody had a chance to look at the resolution. This is for the site that we just discussed, the 55th Road recharge site. Chair to entertain a motion to adopt the resolution.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to adopt the resolution for this site.
Have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the motion or the resolution? I think we can close debate and have a roll call vote, please. Jennifer.
Mr. Barker,
Aye.
Ms. Cole-Hansen,
Aye.
Mr. Gibbs,
Aye.
Mr. McMahon,
Aye.
Mr. Olmstead,
Aye.
Mr. Stevenson,
Aye.
Mr. Van Stone,
Aye.
and Chairman Raybould.
Aye. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, that is all that I have for you this time.
Just keep looking. There's got to be that magic, big, perfect place somewhere out there.
We will keep looking, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Wes, I do have one follow-up on these potential infrastructure projects. We heard some comments yesterday from Surface Water Coalition about timing and location being important. And other than the 55 road project that we just approved, that information is not included in the discussion about these potential infrastructure projects. And I think it'd be helpful for the board to have that information when we look at approving or not approving other infrastructure projects.
Just a clarification now, you're talking about the large infrastructure projects that Neely presented, or are you talking about these specific recharge projects?
I'm talking about these specific recharge projects that he just presented. There's no information about timing and location of where the response goes to, except for the Enterprise Canal 55 road.
Well, I think he was more specific on that because he was ready to propose approving and funding, but
I understand, but I'm just saying, before we get there, we need to know if that's appropriate site.
yeah, the green dots, I think, was 1.5 years for 50%. The yellow, I don't know. You're gonna have to walk us through, but there was kind of a color code thing there.
Right, it was, but
Yeah.
it doesn't tell us location, and it doesn't, is timing, what is timing?
Yeah.
Is it 1 month? Is it 6 months? Is it?
Okay, I understand. As we move forward, if we could have more specific information on each one of these as we prepare to approve them, that'd
Absolutely.
be helpful.
I had those graphs down below. Was trying to save time. I apologize.
Okay. All right, thank you, Wes.
Sure.
Okay, do we need a break?
Yes.
Okay, all right, we're gonna take 10 minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know about the board, but Jennifer started recording. She's ready, so.
Jill's gonna hit a woman's call.
We're gonna call this meeting back to order. The next item on the agenda is rental pool procedures. Mr. Patton.
Yes, sir. Mary Condon is on Zoom and she is going to present this item. I believe there are 3 resolutions for your consideration today. And I believe Director Spackman also wants to address this item before you take action on those resolutions.
That'd be great. Hey, Mary.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and Director Spackman. The board may approve updated procedures for rental pools. The ones for today are for Water District 1, 63, and 65. Within the packet were submitted the 2023 rental pool procedures as adopted by the water users and the Water District Advisory Committees for each of those districts pursuant to Idaho Code Section 42-1765 and subsections of Rule 40 of the Water Supply Bank rules. The Water District Advisory Committees of Water Districts 1, 63, and 65 are board-appointed local committees that facilitate the lease and rental of stored water within their respective pools for the Upper Snake, the Boise River, and Payette River. Consistent with Rule 40, the board is called upon to consider approving the updated rental pool procedures as adopted by their water users and water advisory committees. And I could go into the first resolution and brief you on Water District 1's proposed changes, if that's all right.
Please do.
Water District 1 has updated their rental rate for flow augmentation by the Bureau of Reclamation, and it's increasing from $20 an acre foot to $23 an acre foot. This term is set for years 2023 through 2030. Additionally, Water District 1 rental pool procedures removed large rentals from their common pool. Prior to the 2022 procedures, the amount made available from participant contributions was 50,000 acre feet for large rentals. In 2022, they removed the 50,000 acre feet and changed it to 0. And for 23, they removed the entire reference to large rentals. Because they removed large rentals, they were also able to remove priorities for renting storage. The small rentals that were under priorities for renting was moved under the language of small rentals in common pool, and the other reference to priorities that was removed was for that it did not apply to flow augmentation, so that was able to get removed completely since it didn't apply. Additionally, they updated 2 of their application forms. The first was application to rent storage from the common pool supply. It's a removal of a paragraph relating to large rentals pursuant to the district's moratorium on new consumptive uses. And it's a simple no rentals larger than 100 acre feet was included on the form. And then the restriction on 100 acre feet, however, can still be waived by request and approval by the committee per their procedures under small rentals 5.2.103. The second application that they have changed is for private lease agreements, and it also simplifies the moratorium language to refer the applicant back to their procedures purposes 3.4, and was the only change that was not a result of the large rental deletion from procedures. So before you is the resolution to approve the amended rental procedures for 2023 for Water District 1. And with that, I'll stand for questions for this resolution.
Okay, are there any questions on the Water District 01 rental pool procedures or the accompanying resolution?
Chairman, I move to approve Water District 1 rental pool procedures.
Okay. Oh, yeah, maybe before we vote on that, we need, or would you rather we had all the presentations and then you could comment on all 3, Gary? Is that your preference? Okay. All right, let's hold that motion and then let's go ahead and move through the other 2 sets of procedures, Mary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next resolution before you is for Water District 63. They also have updated their flow aug rental fees for Bureau of Rec from $20 an acre foot to $23 an acre foot for the same term. Additionally, Water District 63 has increased their administrative fees from $1.30 an acre foot to $1.55 an acre foot. The next resolution is for Water District 65, who has also increased their flow aug rental rate from $20 an acre foot to $23 an acre foot. They, just like Water District 63, have also increased their administrative rental fees from $1.30 an acre foot to $1.55 an acre foot. And they are also increasing their in-basin rental price. And with that, that is all I have for summarizing the changes that were made to the rental pool procedures for these districts.
Okay, any questions for Mary on the District 63 or District 65 rental pool procedures? Okay, Director Spackman, would you like to tell us your analysis of these changes?
So Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the rules and regulations for the Water Supply Bank require that the Director of the Department of Water Resources review the proposed procedures and then recommend either approval or denial by the board. And I have reviewed the draft procedures for the 3 water districts that Mary Condon has discussed with the Water Board, and in particular, because of the larger changes in Water District 1, I will represent that I have attended several meetings by the Committee of 9, also attended the annual meeting for Water District 1, listened to the discussion of those rules, and been involved in their development. And I will represent to the board that I recommend approval of the procedures that have been drafted and approved by Water District 1, Water District 63, and Water District 65. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, are there any questions for the director? Okay, thank you, Mr. Spackman. Okay, I think we have a motion on the floor to adopt the resolution for Water District 01 rental pool procedures. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Mark?
I'll second the motion. I don't think that's second.
Oh, I didn't get to that part. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank
would it
you.
be appropriate for me to just make it for all 3 of the water districts?
Yes, if you,
I'll amend the motion to approve the rental pool procedures for all 3, 01, 63, and 65 water districts.
okay, is that amendment okay with the second?
Second approved.
Okay, all right. As the motion has been, the motion before us as amended is to approve the rental pool procedures, the resolutions for all 3 sets of rental pool procedures. Okay, we're going to do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next on the list, loan applications.
Yes, first, just want to address the Lost Valley Reservoir Company and the Finance Committee meeting last week. It was decided to hold that loan application for the time being. And, until some other things occur with that project and that application. And so then with that, we would have Justin Ferguson of our staff present the loan application from Boise City Canal Company.
Welcome, Justin.
Good morning. So just one application for you this morning. A loan for the Boise City Canal Company, looking for a loan for $200,000. They're looking to lower the elevation of their existing headgate infrastructure 16 inches so that they can capture flows during periods of low flow. The Canal Company's held loans with the board before. This will be their 4th, if I'm not mistaken, all paid back in a timely manner. Their annual estimated payments, roughly $50,000. Of that, they have a reserve account and have an excellent payment history. We are authorized to hold against the loan for security shareholder assessments, as well as that reserve account. So with that, I will stand for any questions.
Any questions on this loan application?
Mr. Chairman, there's one additional item. I think it's worth noting that this would go along with an aging infrastructure grant that they have already been approved for.
Oh, okay. All right. Good to know. Any questions? Joanne?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the loan for 200,000 to the Boise City Canal Company.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Pat. Any discussion on the motion or the resolution? Not? Could we have a roll call vote, please? Jennifer?
Mr. Barker,
Mr. Chairman, I have a disclosure to make. My daughter lives in a house that I own and pays $50 a year to the Boise City Canal Company. I don't believe that's a substantial personal benefit to me, and I will vote in favor of this resolution.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Ms. Cole-Hansen, Mr. Gibbs,
Aye.
Mr. McMahon,
Aye.
Mr. Olmstead,
Aye.
Mr. Stevenson,
Aye.
Mr. Van Stone,
Aye.
and Chairman Raybould.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay. we're
That's all I
moving on.
have for phones. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we're moving on to administrative rules update. Welcome, Matt.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. A quick update for you here regarding where we are in our rulemaking from last year and this year. I'll just emphasize I don't have any action items for the board regarding rulemaking today. Last presented rules to you on January 11th. Since that time, we've met many times to present our rules in the House and in the Senate. You might recall that last year we did negotiated rulemaking under the zero-based regulation initiative by the governor for our water supply bank rules, drilling for geothermal resource rules, mine tailing and impoundment structure rules, safety of dam rules, and well driller licensing rules. We published pending rules in November 2022 last year, which you authorized. They got submitted to the legislature. And as I said, we met and presented those rules to the House Resource Committee and Senate Resource Committee in February and March. We presented the rules initially to the House Resource Committee on February 7th. We got through the water supply bank rules, the mine tailing impoundment structure rules, and the safety of dam rules. The House Resource Committee approved the mine tailings and safety of dam rules, but rejected your water supply bank rules. Representative Blanksma motioned to reject the water supply bank rules. I'll say kind of out of general concern that she and some of the other members didn't like the changes to the rules that were proposed. Also, I don't think that they felt we responded with enough confidence and alacrity to a lot of the questions that they asked. I do have a document that I meant to hand out to you guys. It kind of summarizes the questions that were asked that day and the answers that the agency gave to them in writing following up that meeting. But this didn't ultimately inspire them to take it back up. So I don't know that we need to work through these, and maybe it's there as a resource. You'll see that some of the concern they had to do with renting water out of the state of Idaho, which we don't have any leases or rentals right now that cross any state boundaries. They seemed to get hung up on the fact that the board has the authority to receive, review, and authorize leases, whereas the director has the responsibility for reviewing and authorizing rentals. I think many of them just never understood that division of responsibility and said repeatedly, we trust the board, we trust this director, but we might not trust future directors. And so, you know, ultimately, they did reject that rule. So there was a ruling in the moment from the Office of Administrative Rulemaking. They had a bureau chief, Josh Scholler, I believe his name was, and he said that even though the language in the notice says that we repealed the previous rule, in fact, legally, we'll just default back to the existing rule as it is now. So moving forward, we'll continue to operate the water supply bank, or you can continue to operate the water supply bank under the existing rules. And those changes that, you know, a lot of people worked significant, you know, put in a lot of effort last year through those negotiation meetings to make those changes. Those aren't going to go forward this year. We met and presented on March 13th again to the House Resource Committee, the drilling for geothermal rules and the well driller licensing rules, and the House Committee approved both of those rules. There was some discussion regarding both of those. concern in the House Resource Committee that perhaps it's the current requirements to obtain and maintain a well driller's license are a little bit too severe or too onerous, but there was good discussion. And ultimately, the members that had those concerns voted to approve those rules. Senate Resource Committee presentations. We presented on Wednesday, February 15th, the water supply bank rules, drilling for geothermal rules, mine tailing impoundment structure rules, and the safety of dam rules. The Senate Resource Committee approved all of those rules with the exception of the mine tailing impoundment structure rules, which they rejected. They rejected that because we were striking from the rule 2 instances that said we will visit and inspect those mine tailing impoundment structures every other year, but that's inconsistent with statutory changes that were made in 2016. So we were striking that from the rule. There was some confusion on that, and ultimately they rejected it. We presented to them again on March 1st, well driller licensing rules. They approved that. And then they took up that issue of the mine tailing impoundment structure rule. They seem to have spent some time on that, and Senator Schroeder motioned to approve the rules, and so they approved those rules that day. So ultimately, through all of our presentations, we got everything through the House and the Senate with the exception of the water supply bank rules. You know, I'd like to recognize those people that presented in those hearings. Those were difficult. They certainly were not fun at times. And I'd like to point out that Mary Condon was the rulemaking lead on the water supply bank rules, and she presented in the House and the Senate. Shelley Keene helped with that presentation of the water supply bank rules of the House. Brian Patton was the one who presented that to the Senate. And I will note that we did get the water supply bank rules approved in the Senate. Eric Bowe, the groundwater protection manager, presented in the House and the Senate. And then John Falk, our safety of dams program manager, presented technical information when required in those meetings. And so, you know, give them a thanks for going through that. You know, in years past, it seemed to be a little bit different this year than in years past. They went in there, I felt like, kind of with agendas. So moving on to 2023 zero-based rulemaking. We're doing 2 negotiations this year, the underground injection control rules, which are under the authority of the board, and then the water appropriation rules, which are under the authority of the director in the department. The underground injection control rules, or the UIC rules, govern the construction and use of injection wells in the state of Idaho. They apply to all injection wells. Eric Bowe is the groundwater protection section manager, as I mentioned, and he's taking the lead on this rulemaking. The rulemaking team is publishing its notice of intent to promulgate rules, negotiated rulemaking next week on April 5th, and they've scheduled the first public negotiation meeting for April 27th. The water appropriation rules govern the procedures for obtaining the right to divert and use unappropriated public waters, as well as water previously appropriated for hydropower use. Angie Hansen, our water rights section manager downstairs, is taking the lead on that negotiation. And she too is publishing a notice of intent to promulgate rules and negotiate rules next week, and is hosting the first public negotiation meeting on April 14th. I continue to hear rumors that the legislature will adjourn this year without passing a going home bill, which means we likely would be back in that loop of needing to adopt all of our rules as temporary rules. We didn't have to do that last year, in part thanks to then Representative Gibbs, now board member Gibbs, and his efforts to ensure that all of those rules got authorized last year. So if we do have to undertake temporary rulemaking, I'll likely need to come back to this group and get you to pass a resolution authorizing temporary rulemaking for all of your rules so that they remain in effect after July 1. If we don't need to do that, then I probably won't come back to you with any action items before August or September of next year, when we're ready to post and publish proposed rules for our 2 rulemakings this year. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd stand for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Weaver?
Mr. Chairman,
Al?
Mr. Administrative Rules, Weaver. What are we going to do about the water bank rules? Is your thought that we need to revisit rulemaking on that this year, that we punt that to the water supply bank committee, or we just march ahead with the existing.
Mr. Chairman, Board Member Barker, that's a good question, one that Brian and I have talked about a little bit. I think ultimately the committee is the body that needs to decide how to move forward. If we do undertake temporary rulemaking, one possibility would just be to effectuate all of those changes in the adoption of the temporary rule, move forward. Now, I think we'd want to be really clear that we did that in front of the legislature next year. So we'd need to do a lot of outreach with Representative Blanksma and some of the other people to make sure they understood that. Otherwise, you could potentially go through the negotiations again, or you could just let them stand as they are.
I'm going to speak out of turn, but I think adopting the rules as we proposed them after the legislature rejected them would probably not be a good idea. And that if we're going to do a temporary rule, we should just do the temporary rules and give them another shot. I mean, you do the temporary rules under the pre-existing rules. And then
Adopt a temporary rule that are the current rules, the rules before the set.
Yes, that's what I was trying to say. Yes, that's right. I don't think the legislature, maybe Representative Gibbs can correct me, but I don't think the legislature would appreciate it if they told us no and we did it anyway. But you're right, maybe whoever the chairman of the Water Supply Bank Committee needs to have a meeting.
Yes. Well, I think we need to talk about it. I think we need to be sensitive to the direction that the House Resource Committee took, and we need to understand, and we can have that, we can work on that understanding in the Water Supply Bank Committee of what the changes were, what the purpose of the changes were, and determine how to craft a temporary rule that will allow the Water Supply Bank to operate for the coming year. And then we're going to have to work our way through the approval process next session.
And one thought would be, Mr. Chairman, whether or not we could bring back the same rules with better explanation without having to go through negotiated rulemaking again, which we would need some help from legal counsel on.
Yeah, I don't know if once those have been rejected, if you have to start from square one, or if you went back with exactly the same thing, would you have to go through the rulemaking process? We probably do need counsel on that. Okay, that's all for today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you for taking on this task and carrying it out so well. Okay, next on the agenda, Director Spackman.
I'm having Megan Jenkins, my assistant, hand out some materials to you related to a presentation that I gave to the House Resources Committee. My name is Gary Spackman. I'm the director of the Idaho Department of Water Resources. Thanks for a chance to visit with you today. I remember Bob Graham, who always used to sit on my left-hand side where board member McMahon is now located. He was always anxious that I finish before noon, and it appears that I have more time than normal today, but I'll try not to be too long. As
just Mr. Van Stone has taken on the mantle of keeping us prompt on adjournment.
Bob lives about 35 miles more north than I do.
So I want to say first, as I sat, and maybe it's because I'm getting older and more sentimental, but as I sat and listened to presentations both yesterday and today, I am in awe at what's being done, not only by the water board, but by staff. And I started listing names of people and my admiration for them. And I have a long list, and I don't want to name all of them for fear that I leave somebody out. But anyway, I want to just express not only my admiration for the board and its work, but also for staff and the personal affection that I have for all of them. And I want to talk a little bit later about staff and salaries, just to let you know what's happening in that area. What I've handed out to you is a performance report, and then there's an associated PowerPoint presentation, but this performance report is a mandatory requirement for the department to file every year. And it summarizes our work effort. There's a lot in here that we don't have to report, but statutorily, we are required to list not more than 10 performance measures that we then measure the performance of the department against. And we once listed more than this, but we were told statutorily we were limited not more than 10. So we had to select 10, and part of the process is priorities. Part of the process is we need to find measures that are measurable, that we can apply metrics to consistently. Those measures are found on page 7 and 8 of that report. And it's part 2 performance measures. You can look at those. And for the first time that I recall, one of the resource committees asked us and asked me to present on these measures. And so I thought it might be worthwhile just to work through them with you quickly. 4 of these 9, and there are 9 of them here, are related to water right activity. And I thought it was important that these core responsibilities of the department be a part of the performance measures. And those 4 are items 1, 2, 3, and 5. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to take those water right licenses, transfers, water supply bank, and adjudications and just delve into the PowerPoint presentation a little bit with you. I don't want to go too far into it, but if you look now at the PowerPoint sheets, there is a summary of the annual workload of the department compared to what we're completing in the department. So you'll see a bar graph on the first page, and then there's a line through the bar graphs, and that line actually represents the work accomplished by the department and how much is pending at the end of the year. And you can see that we, through all of those processes, we've reduced those pending applications or at least proposals in front of the department until the last 2 or 3 years. And you can see in FY 2022 that the amount of work that the department received exceeds the amount of work that we accomplished. And by the way, it's a record number. You can see that it's the highest in this period of time from FY 2011 to FY 2022. And so the workload is increased and we're not keeping up with it yet. Now, there were significant enhancements. We're still trying to fill some of those positions, but I think of the 15 positions that were approved, we've now filled, I think, 11 of those. I think there's another 4 that we've had difficulty finding people for one reason or another. But anyway, I want to show you in the subsequent bar graphs on pages 4 and, well, really 3 through 5, looking at slide numbers, or 6. One of the pieces of information you'll glean from the transfers is that in 2007, 2008, we had nearly 500 of those pending, and they're an essential water right approval process for the economic activity, particularly in the southern part of the state. And that, along with water supply bank, those two are actually tied together. So they're linked symbiotically. And at the time, there were people who were filing applications for transfer, and it was taking us so long to process them that they were also proposing those same transfers through the water supply bank. And so we were double processing. We were doing the same job twice. And we had to prioritize that work, bring the number of pending transfers down, bring down the time that it took for us to process those. And you can see that we're down around 100, and we've been bouncing around there. And you can see from the performance measures that our target on water right transfers is approximately 100. And I think that's a reasonable number given the delay in time that it takes from the filing to publication of the notice and then review and approval. And if we have approximately 20 in 4 regional offices in the state office that are in that process, along with those that are protested, you can see the red is the number of those that are protested on a monthly basis. That maintaining that number around 100 is a reasonable number to me. Now, the other thing that's happening is, and I've just looked at the rental applications for the water supply bank and not the lease line, just for simplicity, but it's important for me in the water supply bank that we get the rentals out. That seems to me to be what the significant urgency is when people want to rent water. And the graph shows some disturbing trends. And of course, what's interesting is that the transfer review and approval is an authority that's vested solely in the director of the water supply bank, is a board program, but it's done by board staff, but a lot of that work honestly is done by water rights staff as well. And we've tried to juggle the two. So in the springtime, water rights staff concentrates on water supply bank. You can see in the oscillations here, the drops and then the peaks. And that's really what it represents. But you can see that at least the troughs on this are going up and everything is going up. Now, I would attribute this trend, or these trends that you can draw from the bar graph, to a number of factors. One of them, again, is the number of these applications, total applications coming into the department of all varieties. Part of it, honestly, I would attribute to last year's effort in trying to promulgate rules through the negotiated rule process, and the number of hours and days and weeks that staff spent on this process, and as well as board members spending on it, all to have, and I'll just be blunt, all to have all of that effort aborted in a half-hour to 45-minute presentation. And the problem that we're facing, honestly, is, and if you look on slide number 5, you'll show the progress we made in issuing licenses that were also backlogged, and we prioritized this largely because of a court decision. I think board member Barker is well aware of the court decision that determined the nature of a permit for which proof had been filed. Am I correct, Mr. Barker?
I have heard of that decision.
But I know he was involved in that, and there was dismay as a result of that decision, that there was uncertainty for those that held these permits and had been holding them for a long time that had not been licensed. And I said, we've got to get that down. And so staff dedicated time to it. And honestly, just again, to be frank, a few years back, I robbed staff from the board. I robbed staff from hydrology. I took people from various areas in the department and said, we need some help. And they assisted as well as the water right folks. But you can see another trend in this. And we bottomed out at about 600 and now we're starting to increase. And Shelley Keene in our office came to me the last 2 years and said, please, I need to take staff and dedicate them to the adjudication effort in northern Idaho. Can I get some relief from my obsession with trying to get this graph to drop lower? And I relented. And I said, well, I don't want to see the number of those permits that are pending increase, but guess what's happening? Now, the other thing that I need to tell you, and I'm going on too long, Member Van Stone, and you want to get on the road, but the other concern that I have is that if you listen to Matt Weaver, we now have in the next year a required review of the water appropriation rules, and the head of the water rights section, Angie Hansen, is responsible for that rule negotiation, and she will spend hours and hours and weeks and months in that process, possibly, and all of her efforts and dedication will be redirected as well as staff. And we've got to figure out how to keep our processes ongoing. And my other fear is that we'll go through all of that and perhaps again have rules rejected, and all of that effort is for naught. Now I'm on my soapbox a little bit, but I don't know how to keep this reduction and the number of these applications at a level that's acceptable to me and to the public. But I thought it would be helpful to you just to run through that. I'm sorry to spend that much time, but this is what I was trying to present to the legislature. Now, there are some other areas. If you go back to the performance measures in groundwater protection, percentage of wells inspected, you can see that our goal is 30%. At one time, the department was out there trying to get 100%, and they were sending people out there to drive out to a well site where the well was already completed and there was a casing 6 inches stuck out of the ground, and they said, okay, I've been here, and they marked it off. Well, what good were we doing? Nothing. And so I said, I want something productive. If we can't get to all the wells, that's fine. But I want somebody out there at the time of construction, particularly the placement of the surface seal, so that those wells are constructed to prevent as best we can oversee, to prevent the down migration of contaminants down that well. And so we get out to 26 to 27% of those. But there are 5,000 of those being drilled every year in the state now. And we have one person in each regional office and a couple of people here in the state office to oversee that whole program. So I think that's a remarkable accomplishment. Now, and we can talk about water districts and water measurement sites, new telemetry systems, but I want to go to number 9, the Water Resource Board and the recharge. And before I had even presented most of this information, I got a question about this, and why are we only putting out 157,000, and we'll be in that range based on Wesley Hipke's presentation today for FY 2023, unless we have a flush of water that somehow Wes and staff can get out. So the question to me was, well, you've been deficient in the last 2 years, how come? And I said, well, this is an average. It's intended to be an average over time. And then the next question I got, and you just need to know, but the next question was, well, tell us why 200 CFS went by Milner Dam from December until the middle of February. And can you explain that? And I said, no, I was not involved in those discussions or deliberations, but you just need to know that the question was asked. And I thought it was important that I at least tell the board about it. I think we need to add somehow, and we need to work on this before the next performance report in August, when it's due. We need to add some more of the board's work somehow and look at look at what can be reportable either in projects, given the magnitude of what the board is doing right now. Anyway, you have the information in front of you, but I thought you ought to know that it was presented, and maybe you can ruminate about it a little bit. I want to talk about a couple of other things. I did want to mention, because it is a kind of a remote program, but I appreciated John Lafredo's presentation and Amy Castle's past work on water transactions. You know, the Lemhi River's a long ways away, but L6 is a particularly important pinch point on the Lemhi system. And I remember, because I've been around long enough, when there was no flow going over L6 and there were threats against the irrigators and the water users up there regarding a take under the ESA. And, you know, the board's efforts up there in the water transactions program, not only at L6, but on reconnects on the tributaries, is essential and important responsibility that the board has. And I appreciate their efforts. I want to talk just for a minute about joint administration in the various basins. And if any of you found that the presentation by Michael McVeigh was tedious rather than extremely exciting, I won't use his term, but you at least ought to be alarmed, I think, by the amount of work that needs to be done in that area. And everybody in every basin, at least close to the SPA, now wants a groundwater model. And I just received 2-3 days ago a letter from Portneuf Irrigating Company, which is, their lands are, well, actually, this is from the 3 entities there: Portneuf Irrigating, Portneuf Marsh Valley, which is called Downey, and McMahon Ditch Company in the McMahon area. And they're writing me a letter, and the object of this letter is you, as the director, are either threatening to or have been administering water rights, the surface water rights from the Portneuf River and tributaries, in priority with the water rights on the Snake River. And they're not arguing that administration is inappropriate. They're saying it's not fair that our surface water rights are being regulated at the same time that there are groundwater right holders with pumps located right next to the river. And I could send you up above Lava Hot Springs and show you some. Member Gibbs probably knows where they are, sitting right next to the Portneuf River. There's a bank of pumps that I'm aware of and I've seen up there, and it has to be river water that they're pumping. But their advocacy is justified, I think, and their concerns are justified. But we don't have the tools right now to go into that area, nor do we have the tools to go into the Big Lost or Raft River or some of the other areas to jointly administer the water rights. And we, I think, have to have the modeling capability in those areas to support and justify that administration. And so you see what's driving some of that expanded, I guess, horizontal bar graph that you saw from Michael McVeigh and the number of projects that are out there. And I guess I want to just say I appreciate the board's support, financial support for those efforts, because I think it's imperative that we have that information and that technical support, and that we're able to write decisions that are based on the best scientific information that's available to us and employ those tools. But there are expectations out there, not only from the senior water right holders on the surface water sources, but expectations, on the tributaries, that they not be unfairly treated in the administration of water rights. Now, last, what I'd like to talk about is employee compensation. And I just want to tell you that the recommendation from the state human resources folks to the legislature was a 4% increase for employees. And then this year there were supposed to be enhancements for public safety employees, and then next year for engineers and other technical staff over and above the 4%. And the legislature instead, through JFAC and the legislature, decided as an alternative that they'd appropriate $1.20 per employee. And we have some guidance, but it's less than the 4% here. And the other thing that's happening, just for your information, the state HR people are also shifting what we call the pay line. So they establish boundaries for the various positions, each one of them categorized. And then in each one of those, there's a midpoint, and then there's a low and a high, and they're based on percentages. And we have been trying very hard to bring people in at 83% of the midpoint, just to try to get people on board. Well, if we bring people on at that percentage, then we have to keep people who are good employees above the 83. Otherwise, the existing employees aren't being paid what those who are coming in are being paid. And so what happens is we have to be moving people up. Well, if they shift the pay line, and the proposal is somewhere between 7 and 9% for employees, that means that the midpoint goes up. That means that those percentages go up 7 to 9%, but the legislature funds less than 4%. And so what happens is all the existing employees are now, at least a lot of them, instead of making 83 or 85 or 86%, will be making 70, 78% or 79, but we're trying to bring people in at 83. And so we got $1.20 per employee to work with to bring all of those people up above 83 so that we can hire people and get them on board. So you can see that it results in significant compression to employees, and we have a difficult time in hiring new folks and recognizing the people that we have. And we try to do what we can. Usually every year we can squeeze out 1 or 2% out of salary savings where we don't fill positions, and that's ongoing. We've looked at it in the past, but I thought it might be helpful just for you to know. I'd probably said enough and need to get Member Van Stone on the road, so I'll lay off my presentation. Thanks for an opportunity, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, board members, is there any questions or comments for Director Spagman? Dean.
I have a quick one. Looking at your graph, kind of a frightening number to me is the number of new wells going in. It looks like it's increased almost 2,000 a year, just under that since 17. You see that trend flattening or going down, or is that still going up? And I assume the bulk of those are, 90% are domestics.
Mr. Chairman and Member Stevenson, I don't, at least given the influx of people to the state and the development that we see around us, I don't see that number changing significantly. In fact, because of moratoriums, which you've heard discussed, on the Snake Plain and in the Wood River Valley, we may even see an increase in those numbers because the community wells are subject to moratoriums right now. The municipalities are subject to a moratorium. Now, they may have some room to build out under their present water rights, but where do the developers go then? Because the domestics are essentially exempt from administration or regulation. They don't have to file with the department.
Okay, thank you, Director. Appreciate your attendance and working with us on an ongoing basis and for your leadership.
Thank you.
Okay, we're down to non-action items. Brian, do you have anything? Mark? Al?
Nothing.
Joanne?
I just got word that we are all confirmed.
Okay, I have the details on that. All water board members were confirmed with the caveat. The Senate included a condition that member Gibbs will be required to wash Lieutenant Governor Bedke's truck once a month during the duration of his appointment.
Do with water.
Dry cleaning.
Yeah, okay. All right, Dale, do you have anything?
No, I don't have anything. Thank you.
Dean? Pat? Okay, thank you all. We had a good session. We got a lot accomplished. Brian, next meeting.
Okay, the next regular meeting scheduled for May 18 and 19 in Idaho Falls. And we'll be getting you out information on that as soon as we can. The following meeting will be July 20 and 21st, scheduled for Moscow. Undoubtedly, we will need a series of committee meetings between now and May, however, on a number of topics: finance, water supply bank, likely cloud seeding, and some others.
Okay, any questions on the meeting schedule? Okay, Dale, it's time.
Thank you. Thank Gary.
You gonna make the motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, one and all.
The treasurer now, you can be.
I told you, he's in charge. He's in charge of